My friends, welcome to this episode of the Outdoor Gear Review. I hope you all are doing well. Over the years, I've been asked many times how I go about setting up my tarps for on-trail and off-trail use. I get asked this so often, in fact, that's what this episode is all about. I'm going to show you all how I set up my tarps. I'm going to share with you the components that I use, how I use them, so you all will have a good idea on how to set up your own tarps or to make improvements to your tarp systems. If you've been around here on the channel, you've noticed that I use a tarp in just about every single one of my adventures, and that's because it's always raining here in the mountains of North Carolina. Because it's always raining here in the mountains, I need a tarp system that's very quick to deploy, because the truth is, when you're in the outdoors, seconds matter. Seconds can make all the difference in the world. It can be the difference between staying dry and being soaking wet. That is just one reason why I've developed this system here. It's all about speed, functionality, simplicity, and protection. As you can see here, my tarp kit is composed of two components. This here is a dry bag, and I keep my tarp that has guy lines attached to it inside of it, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. Basically, this is for additional cordage, tent stakes, and so on. By the way, everyone, for this setup, I'm going to use green elephant poles. They're going to make this nice and easy. Starting here with the tarp. This is the AquaQuest 10 foot by 13 foot guide tarp. This is basically AquaQuest's lightest weight and least strong and least waterproof tarp. Don't let that concern you though, because this tarp is incredibly strong and incredibly waterproof while being lightweight. The thing about AquaQuest is that they have multiple levels of strength as far as their tarps go. The guide tarp, it's the lightest, it's the weakest, it's the least waterproof, and it goes up from there. As you go up, they become stronger, heavier, and more waterproof. I picked this tarp here, the guide tarp, because it offers a good balance of weight, strength, and waterproofness. And I'll use this for all three seasons: spring, summer, and fall. In the dead of winter, in the worst of blizzards, like the strongest of winds, I'll go with a Defender tarp. But for everything else, I'll go with a guide tarp. Talking about using this tarp in stormy conditions, I have used this in some knockdown thunderstorms, winds at 35 miles an hour, horizontal rain, tons of thunder and lightning and hail. No matter what I have done with this tarp, it just keeps on going, and it's never let me down. It's never leaked, it's never tore, I've never had any issues. As I mentioned just a few minutes ago, this tarp offers an excellent balance between strength, weight, and waterproofness, and that's why I use it. For the money, this is a tarp that's very hard to beat. Yes, you can find less expensive tarps, but this tarp here is going to offer a level of balance that other tarps don't. Now let's talk about why I use the 10 foot by 13 foot tarp. This is my preferred size as far as tarps go. It offers a good balance of coverage, protection, versatility as far as setups go, and at the same time, it's lightweight. Anything larger tends to be a little bit too heavy, and anything smaller tends not to offer enough protection from the storms that frequent the areas that I explore. At the same time, everyone, this tarp does not take up much space inside of my backpack because it has a rather small storage size. Again, it's all about balance. Those are the reasons why I use this tarp. Now let's talk about the cordage that I use with the tarp itself. What I personally like to use is 2mm Dynama cordage. This cordage here I've had for a very long time, and it just keeps on going. And that's because it's incredibly strong and durable. You may not know this, but Dynama is the world's strongest fiber. It is 15 times stronger than steel, and that makes it perfect for a setup like this. It's incredibly durable. It can handle strong tensioning without stretching, which is very important when you're talking about the tension of your tarp. Next, It's very lightweight for the strength. It stretches very little, especially compared to nylon cordage. This cordage is completely waterproof and will absorb no water. At the same time, it is UV resistant. That means it can handle wet conditions and also sunny conditions for prolonged periods of time, and it's not going to degrade at all. Lastly, concerning this cordage, it is moderately abrasive, and that's important. Oftentimes, people don't think about this. They don't think about the abrasiveness of the cordage that they're using. This really is more important than most people think, and here's why. If the cordage that you're using is moderately abrasive, it'll do a good job of holding a knot and it won't slip when you're tying it around a tree. But if it's too abrasive though, you'll tie a knot and you'll never get that knot out. On the flip side, if the cordage is too silky, it will not hold a knot well, and it can even slip from the tree or the tree limb that you're tying it to. It can even slip from your tent stakes. So again, having cordage that is moderately abrasive is important because it offers you, again, a good balance. Those are the reasons why I use the cordage that I do, but do know this. Just as with the tarp, you can use any cordage that you want, any tarp that you want. It really is up to you what you want to spend, what you want your loadout to be. With this tarp here, it's not the least expensive, and at the same time, it's not the most expensive. The same can be said with the cordage. I wouldn't call it cheap, but I wouldn't call it expensive either. If you don't want to spend a lot of money on cordage, you can use 550 cord. It adds a little bit of weight, it stretches a little bit, but it's not expensive at all. And as far as the tarp goes, you can go with something that's polyester. It's gonna weigh more, but it's gonna be a whole lot less expensive, plus some other pros and cons. Since we're talking about cordage, let's talk about how many lines that I attach to my tarps. For myself, I like to attach a bare minimum of 6 lines. I want guy lines in each of the corners, that's 4, and I want a guy line in the center ridge point on both sides of the tarp. That equals 6. I find that with 6 guy lines in total, I can do just about any setup. I would say 95% of the setups that I personally need to do, I can do with these guy line placements. When it comes to attaching the guy lines to the tarps, I like to use slip knots. That way I can very easily remove the guy line if I need to and move it to a different location. When you're in the outdoors and weather's coming your way, seconds matter, seconds count. And that's just another reason why I do the things that I do. It's all about speed, efficiency, simplicity, and getting the job done right, while offering myself all the protection that I need. When it comes to guy line length, I like for every single guy line to be 9 foot long. I found that that's the sweet spot. I would say 95% of the time, having a 9-foot guy line in each of the corners and for the ridge lines, I can set up the tarp any way that I need to. It's gonna work in 95% of situations. On that rare occasion that I need extra length, I have my cordage bag. Inside of that cordage bag, I have extra lines of cordage. I have 4 extra bundles, each one 9 foot long, and I have 1 additional bundle that's 20 foot long. That 20-foot line is for just in case situations, and I would say that I use it maybe once or twice a year, namely when I'm off trail in the forest in the middle of nowhere. Speaking of which, you will oftentimes find when you're out in the middle of nowhere off trail, the forest is not going to do you any favors, right? When it comes to your setups, you may have a tree that's 15 foot away, and that one over there is 6 foot away. The next point that I want to talk about are tensioners. You may have noticed that I do not use them, and that's for a reason. I do not like them. With my experiences out in the wild, I have found that tensioners slow me down and they get in the way more than they help me. Once you put a tensioner on a line, it tends to cause tangles, it adds complications, and it slows you down, plain and simple. For myself, I don't want anything to slow me down when I'm in the outdoors, especially when seconds count. A handful of seconds can make the difference between you being soaking wet and you being protected. And I need to say this, as you spend more time in the outdoors, as you gain more experience with your gear, you will discover that it's important to keep it simple. Very easily you can overcomplicate things, and you don't want to do that. As soon as you complicate things, it begins to slow you down and it causes issues. So again, keep it simple. Trust me, you'll be glad that you did. I've already spoken a little bit about my cordage bag here. Additionally, inside of this, I will keep some tent stakes. These are tri-stakes. They do a great job of anchoring to the ground and staying in place, and because they're tri-stakes, they do not rotate. They do not spin, and I like that. Your cordage bag is one of the most important pieces of kit that you have with you. It can make the difference between life and death. You can use this extra cordage to make a splint, to pitch a shelter, to build a shelter, to start a fire, to make a repair, replace a shoelace, make a tourniquet, so on and so forth. This is something that everyone should have. Now everyone, I want to talk about this here. This is a dry bag, and this is what I keep my tarp in. There are very specific reasons why I use a dry bag as the storage bag for my tarp system. First, most storage bags for tarps are too small to use them in the outdoors. You might be able to roll up your tarp nice and tight at home, but being in the outdoors, in the real world, when it's windy outside, it's raining, everything's soaking wet, that is something completely different. That is one reason why I use a dry bag. By using a bag that's this big, I can easily get the tarp inside of the bag and I can also get it out. Then I can compress it and it takes up the same amount of space. At the same time, in the morning when I'm rolling up a wet tarp, I don't have to worry about whether or not I rolled it up tight enough to fit it in a tiny storage bag. I mean, look at the size of this. It will hold just about any size tarp. Next, the following reason why I use this dry bag is very important. This is going to keep the rest of my gear inside of my backpack nice and dry. So let's say that I go out for a trip, it rains all night long, I can take that wet tarp, put it inside of this dry bag here, and none of my other gear gets wet. I can put my tarp inside of this, my rain jacket, my rain pants, and so on, and everything else is protected. Next, everyone, I can use this for all sorts of purposes around camp. I can use this as a kneeling pad so that my pants don't get wet when I'm processing firewood. I could collect firewood, put it inside of this bag, and easily transport it to my camp. I can use this as a bear bag. I can put all my food in it, string it up in a tree, and my food is protected. You can see right there just how versatile of a piece of kit this is, and just how important it is. Now you can see here that this is a large dry bag. This is a 25-liter bag. And for myself, I've found that this is just a good size for me. It's lightweight, very versatile, and it's not expensive. And there you have it, everyone. That is how I go about setting up my tarps for on-trail and off-trail use. Those are the components that I use and the reasons why I use them. At the same time, I've explained why I do certain things. In the end, it's all about simplicity. It's all about versatility. And at the same time, it's all about protection. Now, of course, there's many ways of going about things. So comment down below, share your thoughts. What do you all think about my method? And share what your method is. How do you set up your tarp? What components do you carry with you? And I'm curious, everyone, what size tarp do you like to use? 10 foot by 10 foot, smaller than that, or larger than that? I certainly hope you all have found this episode helpful. If you did, hit the thumbs up before you go. I do appreciate it. Everyone, take care, be well, strength and honor. I will see you all around again soon. Bye for now.